They called him a fat hooligan. They said he was too stocky, too reckless, too raw. But from the moment Wayne Rooney stepped onto a pitch, he absolutely cooked everyone. He made star players look bang average, and he turned himself into a bona fide legend. At 14, Rooney was already bullying grown men. At 16, he stunned the greatest team in England with an absolute screamer of a worldie. Is screamer of a worldie a thing? Probably not, but we moved. At 18, he smashed through the international scene like a wrecking ball, terrorizing world-class defenders like Lilian Thuram and Ricardo Carvalho, who simply could not handle him. But by 21, true to form, the media had turned on him. Rooney wasn't polished or graceful. He certainly wasn't media trained. And so, in this cheeky, street-smart Scouse kid, the media had found their newest villain, a quote-unquote fat hooligan. And yeah, he had a stocky build. And sure, he put on a few pounds over the summer. But fat? That was a stretch. Yet through all of the slander, all the controversies, and all the setbacks, Wayne Rooney just kept dominating. He scored more Premier League goals than Thierry Henry, more career goals than Drogba, Owen, or Torres. Up until 2023, he was England's all-time greatest ever goal scorer. And he's the only player in Premier League history with 200 plus goals and 100 plus assists. Now that's a mic drop stat if ever there was one. Your legend could, never mind. Look, Rooney had it all. Pace, power, tremendous technique, high football IQ. He could drop deep and play make. He could drive forward and beat defenders. He could finish with either foot, and he was decent in the air too. Long story short, he was straight up unplayable. Not to mention, this guy had his own TV show, and he was on the cover of FIFA for 7 years in a row, more than any other player ever. Yet somehow his legacy still divides opinion to this day, as tweets like this show. So I invite you to come on a journey, because we must answer this question. Was Wayne Mark Rooney, the so-called overweight thug, actually England's greatest ever talent? Football bred. Anyone who saw Rooney play could tell you he was all out action. Every tackle full-blooded. Every run was all out. Everything was full throttle. People talk about hunger. Mate, Wayne Rooney had it in buckets. And to understand why, we have to go back to where it all began. Croxteth, Liverpool, aka Crocky. Wayne Rooney grew up on the raw streets of Croxteth, well known for its crime, violence, gangs and firms. Rooney was never afforded the luxury of being soft or innocent. His environment demanded toughness and fight. So that aggression in his game, that was Croxteth running through his veins. It was about never backing down. It was about survival. And it was all Rooney ever knew. As he put it,
you get taught you have to fight to survive. You have to fight. You get taught you have to work harder than everyone else.
That wasn't just talk. Rooney lived it. And when he stepped onto a pitch, everyone could feel it. At just 9, he tore through the youth league. One season, he scored 99 goals for Coppelhouse Boys. Everton signed him, and the next season, he scored 114 goals across the under-10s and 11s. Guys, this was not normal. These were freakish numbers. Fun fact, Liverpool actually scouted him first, and Rooney turned up to his trial in an Everton shirt. Gangster. An Everton scout called that night, and the rest is history. By 14, Rooney was starting for the Everton under-19. His raw power, finishing and pure rage made him unstoppable. By 16, he was training with the Everton first team, and straight away, Rooney noticed something. Rooney said at the time, "I knew I was the best player. At 16, I knew I was better than all of them." And soon, the whole world would know it too. Everyone in football had heard the whispers. There's this kid at Everton who's like nothing you'd ever seen. Thierry Henry had heard about it. The boy with a body of a man who was the next big thing. Henry himself recalls, "You looked at him and you could see the power. Just him walking. You looked and you knew. He wanted to destroy everything that was in front of him." Now, sometimes players get overhyped. Often there's a gap between the hype and the reality. But Rooney was about to prove that there was no gap. And if anything, the hype had sold him short. By this time, Rooney had already made history as Everton's youngest ever debutant, picking up 2 assists versus Tottenham and Birmingham, and scoring twice against Wrexham in the League Cup. Yet on October October the 19th, 2002, a 16-year-old Wayne Rooney was only on the bench against the league leaders Arsenal, the best team in the country. The Gunners were on a 30-game unbeaten run and expected 3 easy points at Goodison. Unluckily for Arsenal, Wayne Rooney never got the memo. His goal was to score in the Premier League age 16. 5 days before his 17th birthday, this was his last chance. He came off the bench at 1-1 thinking, if I get a chance, I'm shooting. I'm shooting from anywhere. Then the moment came. A Gravison long ball dropped out the sky. Rooney took one perfect touch, a short burst forward, and bang! A 25-yard rocket smashed past David Seaman, off the bar and in. Goodison Park went ballistic. Wayne was mobbed by his teammates and Arsenal's unbeaten run was over. They thought they'd stroll to a win. Instead, they got Wayne Rooney. At the time, that goal made Rooney the youngest ever Premier League scorer. And just like that, one of the world's best young talents had announced himself to the footballing world. It was only right then that one of football's greatest commentators, the legendary Clive Tilsley, was on hand to utter the iconic words, remember the name, Wayne Rooney. You probably think Rooney would have had a wild celebration that night, but nope. Hours later, he was just playing football with his mates in the street. That was Wayne Rooney. Even when he won BBC Young Sportsman of the Year just months later, there was no fuss. To Rooney, football was all that mattered. But this was just the beginning. Over the next few years, he'd become the most sought-after teenager in world football. Listen, you have to understand, 17-year-old Wayne Rooney was a one-man wrecking crew. Over 2 seasons, Rooney cemented himself as Everton's talisman. He got 18 goals and 11 assists in a struggling team that lacked real quality. He was a generational talent, delivering match-winning performances and carrying his club. Games got bossed, bullies got bullied, and screamers got screamed. Everton desperately wanted to lock him down. They offered Rooney an insane 400% salary increase, £50,000 per week, Everton's biggest ever contract, but Rooney turned it down. His ambitions were massive. He wanted trophies, he wanted to play in Europe, he wanted to be the best. And after a blistering Euro 2004, which we'll talk about more a bit later, all of the biggest clubs on the planet wanted Rooney. But once Man United showed interest, Rooney admitted, once I knew United were in for me, there was only one place I was going. 27 million Great British pounds later, a world record fee for a teenager at the time, United had landed their young man. Rooney signed one of football's richest ever teenage contracts. What a story. A fresh-faced 18-year-old from Croxteth catapulted into the global spotlight, now to don the world-famous red of Manchester United. But just as the world was falling in love with his football, the tabloids were circling. Weeks after Euro 2004, the headlines dropped. Rooney had visited prostitutes while still a teenager at Everton. He was young and stupid by his own admission. He apologized publicly, but the damage was done. From that moment on, the public image of Wayne Rooney was shifting. But for all the noise off the pitch, Rooney had one answer: his football. And when he arrived at Manchester United, he blew the doors off. Imagine walking into a dressing room full of legends: Scholes, Giggs, Keane, Van Nistelrooy, and instantly making a massive impact. Well, that is exactly what Rooney did. On his Champions League debut, his first game for United, the story goes that a little Scouse voice in his head said, "Wayne, why don't you score a hat-trick, lad?" And Wayne replied, "All right." Left foot, right foot, outrageous free kick, a hat-trick versus Fenerbahce on his debut. Unreal. If you hadn't seen a real-life phenom before then, you had now. Rooney slotted perfectly alongside Ruud van Nistelrooy and linked seamlessly with a young Cristiano Ronaldo, instantly becoming one of United's most dangerous weapons. And this weapon specialized in 2 things: 1, big performances in big games, and 2, scoring absolute thunderbolts. Exhibit A, his BBC Goal of the Year versus Middlesbrough. Exhibit B, his Champions League masterclass versus AC Milan. And Exhibit C, that volley versus Newcastle. You know the one where he's screaming at the ref and then he just decides to lash it in, top bins? Yeah, that one. By 21, he was a Premier League winner. By 22, a back-to-back Premier League champion and a UEFA Champions League winner. And in the process, he'd become part of something truly terrifying. An attack so unpredictable, so ruthless, it devastated devastated world football. By 2006, Sir Alex Ferguson's relationship with Ruud van Nistelrooy was completely broken. Real Madrid pounced and Ruud was gone. So what would Ferguson do? Sir Alex ripped up the playbook. No traditional nine, no predictable shape. Instead, he played a front three of pure chaos. Cristiano Ronaldo was given full attacking freedom, drifting inside from the left to be the focal point. Tevez was an aggressive pressing forward, but he couldn't really bridge the midfield and the attack. Ferguson needed a forward who could press relentlessly, drop into midfield, win battles, create chances, and score. Rooney was the only one capable of doing it all. Rooney was the only one who could make the system work. Ferguson admitted Wayne could have been a 30-goal-a-season striker, but we needed him to do more. Rooney himself confessed, "At times, I had to sacrifice my game for the team." So while Ronaldo grabbed the headlines and Tevez brought the fight, Wayne Rooney did it all, whatever the team needed. So thanks to him, the Rooney, Tevez, and Ronaldo front line ran riot. From 2007 to 2009, they won the league 3 straight times and the Champions League. But when the trophies were lifted, Rooney's sacrifice barely got any recognition. Yet without Rooney, this era of United dominance simply doesn't happen. But football moves fast, and seemingly overnight, the trio was no more. Cristiano Ronaldo had conquered England and won the Ballon d'Or. Real Madrid came calling, and £80 million later, he was gone. Tevez was tired of waiting for assurances from United. He got an offer from the blue side of the city and took it. The destruction was over. The chaos was gone. And standing alone in the spotlight was Wayne Rooney. United's hopes squarely resting on his shoulders. We didn't know it at the time, but with the weight of the club on his back, Wayne Rooney was about to unleash something truly special. For the very first time, Rooney was Man United's undisputed main man, and United needed him to develop a serious case of main character syndrome. Sir Alex Ferguson now demanded one thing. He told him, "Wayne, I need goals." And boy, did he deliver. What followed was one of the most outrageous goal-scoring seasons Old Trafford had ever seen. Playing as a lone striker, Rooney shredded defenses for fun, scoring 34 goals in all competitions, and he wasn't even a team's designated penalty taker. If he was, those numbers would have been silly. Premier League, Champions League, derbies, rivalries, it didn't matter what it was. Rooney always delivered. United fans had seen him sacrifice himself for the team. They'd seen him play deeper, play wider, track back, grind and press, but they'd never seen this. This was Rooney unshackled. And that year, everyone got Wayne Rooney. On the biggest nights, he thrived. The toughest opponents, he battered them. A few highlights. He scored a devastating counter-attack goal versus Arsenal at the Emirates, sprinting from his own half to finish off a perfect move in a 3-1 win. He scored a crucial header versus City in the Manchester derby, a late winner to seal a 4-3 victory in stoppage time. Week after week, game after game, no one could deal with him. Rooney was the complete number 9, relentless in his movement, clinical in the box, and strong in the air. This really was Rooney at the peak of his powers. United were flying, Rooney was flying. Wazza, as he's affectionately known, was leading them towards Champions League and Premier League glory. But then, in one cruel moment, it all changed. The 30th of March 2010, Champions League quarter-final versus Bayern Munich. Rooney got off to a flyer, opening the scoring inside 2 minutes. Later in the game though, Bayern fought back to go up 2-1, and then disaster struck. Rooney, attempting to challenge Mario Gomez, came down awkwardly on his foot and twisted his ankle. He signaled to the bench immediately as he fell to the ground in pain. Unable to put any weight on it, he had to be helped off the pitch by United staff members. Scans later confirmed a sprain. United, though, rushed him back for the second leg just days later. Rooney was clearly unfit, limping, and he was ineffective. United were eliminated. That injury derailed everything. It cost United the Champions League, and it cost them the Premier League title. Before that night in Munich, Wayne Rooney was on top of the footballing world. After it, he just wasn't the same. He never managed to regain his sharpness. And just when it felt like things couldn't get any worse, they did. The media had always painted Rooney as an angry scouser, a thug in boots. And to be fair, at times Rooney didn't help himself. Brothel scandals, red cards, angry TV outbursts, the headlines never stopped. But in 2010-11, the chaos reached a new level. By October 2010, Wayne Rooney wanted out of Manchester United. He questioned the club's ambition, demanding to leave. And when you looked at the squad, you kind of got it. He had gone from linking up with Ronaldo and Tevez to chasing scraps with Federico Machieda and Darren Gibson. And United's star signing of that summer? Bebe, a winger Sir Alex had never even seen play before he signed. But still, when Rooney wanted out, United fans turned on him instantly. But why so quickly? Well, weeks earlier, the tabloids had dropped a bombshell. Rooney had cheated on Colleen while she was pregnant. The media circus erupted. Front page headlines, non-stop speculation. Every detail of his private life was dragged into the spotlight. Overnight, Rooney went from England's world-class anti-hero to public enemy number one. People never looked at Rooney the same again. So when the news broke that he wanted out, banners appeared at Old Trafford. Colleen forgave you, we won't. A Nike poster he was featured in was vandalized with the words, "Join City and you're dead." Just like that, Rooney had become the villain. But United couldn't afford to lose their talisman. So Sir Alex Ferguson stepped in, holding crisis talks and publicly making it clear that Rooney belonged at Old Trafford. In the end, Ferguson convinced him to stay. A new 5-year, £250,000 per week deal was signed, one of the biggest contracts in football at the time. But that alone wasn't going to win back the fans. Rooney needed a moment, something to remind everyone exactly who he was. And mate, what he did next did exactly that. February the 12th, 2011, the Manchester Derby. Old Trafford was electric. United and City were locked at 1-1. A battle between the reigning champions and a City side desperate to prove that they belonged at the top. In the 78th minute, Nani whipped across into the box. A slight deflection sent the ball looping awkwardly behind Rooney. For most players, the chance would have been gone, but not for Rooney. He adjusted, launched himself into the air, and boom! A thunderous overhead kick sent the ball screaming past Joe Hart and into the top corner. Old Trafford went nuts. The Premier League had just witnessed a goal for the ages. And with that, Wayne Rooney had silenced every doubter, every critic, and re-endeared himself to the United faithful. They were all on their feet, marveling at his brilliance. Rooney had reminded the world who he was, a world-class difference maker. And the goal itself was immortalized in history. It was the winner of the Premier League goal of the decade. That season, Rooney finished 5th in the Ballon d'Or voting, his highest ever ranking. It was well-deserved recognition of his brilliance. Yet, in true Rooney fashion, the spotlight didn't stay on him for long. Just one season later, everything shifted again. Ferguson had one last mission, and again, Rooney would be at the center of it. In 2012, Sir Alex was building yet another title-winning side. We didn't know it at the time, but it would be Sir Alex Ferguson's last. Once more, he'd ask Rooney to sacrifice. He now needed Rooney to leave off being the main man, drop deeper again, and become the link between midfield and attack. That would set the stage for a new attacking focal point. Enter Robin van Persie, the deadliest finisher in the league, a man on a mission. And with Rooney supplying him the ammunition, RVP went ballistic. Van Persie scored 30 goals that season and United ran away with the league. Rooney's impact was still undeniable. He contributed 16 goals and 15 assists, the numbers of a complete playmaker. But again, when the trophies were lifted, the spotlight shone mainly on Van Persie. Rooney had just won his 5th Premier League title, but it didn't feel like his team anymore. And with Ferguson stepping down, the story of Wayne Rooney at Manchester United was about to change forever. Now, you might have noticed that I haven't mentioned Rooney's international career yet, and that's on purpose because Wayne's story with England was so monumentous, it deserves its own space. It's a movie all its own. So now, let's hit play on that story. Wayne Rooney was hailed as England's saviour, the golden boy who could finally break the curse, the one who could make football come home. And for a moment there, it felt like that future was inevitable. In England, we have a term, different gravy. It's used to describe something ridiculously good or something on a whole other level. Well, that is what Wayne Rooney was at Euro 2004. He was different grave. He set that tournament alight. In 3 games, he ripped through elite defenses like he'd been doing it for years. He scored 4 goals in his first ever international tournament. And the scary part was that he was outshining the world's best players. Zidane, Henry, Figo, none of them had lit up the Euros like Rooney did. And he was just 18. He played like he was the best player there. And to be honest, he looked like it. And just as the country dared to believe, disaster struck. In the first half of England's quarterfinal matchup against Portugal, there was a challenge on Rooney that made his boot come off. Rooney recalls, I knew straight away something had gone. I heard it pop, I felt it crack, and I was thinking, oh no. There was no way I could have carried on. I was devastated. Rooney's tournament was over and England weren't far behind. With him, England were world beaters. Without him, they were beatable and the fear factor was gone. They went out on penalties and their dream of Euro glory had ended in a nightmare. Fast forward to 2006. The Lightning Seeds, along with Baddiel and Skinner, had written the greatest football song of all time, and 3 Lions echoed all around the country. The World Cup was upon us. England would again look to Rooney to lead the line and bring football home. But there was a problem. Just weeks before the tournament, Rooney had fractured his foot in a Premier League match against Chelsea. He was then in a race against time to recover, and England was so reliant on his talent that they gambled again. Across his first 4 games, there were no goals, no flashes of brilliance. Everything he did looked a half step slower. Rooney clearly wasn't fit and it was obvious. England faced off against Portugal in the quarterfinals. It was a tense, physical and quite nasty affair. Rooney, frustrated by his limitations, got tangled up with Ricardo Carvalho, lost his cool and stamped on him. It was a straight red, and then we got Ronaldo's infamous wink just seconds later. With that act, Rooney had become the ultimate bad guy. So with no thought to the fact that an entire nation's hopes were being dumped onto the shoulders of one young man who was pressured to play, not fully fit and barely recovered, Rooney was made the scapegoat. Of course the stamp was wrong, but really and truly, Rooney never should have been there. England's love for Rooney never really fully recovered, not after that moment and the media coverage that followed it. To say that the World Cup in 2010 is one to forget is a massive understatement, and for Rooney it was deja vu. Rooney was coming off his best ever goal scoring season, one which saw him win the PFA Players Player of the Year award. Went to the tournament injured and not fully fit once again. Despite everything though, Rooney kept fighting for England, but the team was flat, the system was rigid and the pressure was unbearable. England limped out early and Rooney never found the back of the net even once. At one point, Rooney, angry at the circumstances, said to a camera, "Nice to see your own fans booing you." This wasn't sarcasm, this was pain. The pain of a player who'd given everything only to be turned on. In the 2014 World Cup, England really did hit rock bottom. They finished last in their group. On his 3rd attempt, Rooney had finally scored his first World Cup goal, but it was just a footnote on a terrible campaign for England. Rooney's England career was never fairly judged. He was expected to be everything: saviour, captain, playmaker, scorer, and he was criticised when he couldn't perform miracles. Imagine people demanding that an injured player win the major tournaments. Crazy world. His sacrifices were ignored. The adaptation of his game, carrying a broken team, giving everything despite England's failures. He was England's records goal scorer, he was a warrior. But instead of legendary status, he was criticised for not doing more. History, it seems, rarely honours warriors without crowns. And Wayne Rooney is almost certainly one of England's most unappreciated talents. The final act. The moment that Ferguson walked away from United, the club descended into chaos. Managers came and went, players faltered, but Rooney stayed through it all. He adapted again, wore the armband, and carried a fractured club on his shoulders. He broke United's all-time scoring record, 253 goals, legendary numbers. Sorry, let me say that again. Wayne Rooney is Manchester United's all-time leading scorer. His United career is completely iconic. Following his United chapter, he returned home to Everton. It was nostalgic but bittersweet. Then came Major League Soccer and DC United, where against all the odds he delivered one last flash of brilliance. One night for DC United, Rooney reminded the world exactly what he was made. In the 90th minute, when his goalkeeper came up, there was an empty net. An opponent was charging toward DC's goal, and out of nowhere, Rooney exploded. He sprinted back and stopped the attack with a crunching tackle. He bounced right up and delivered a perfect crossfield ball. A teammate scored and the game was won. It was a phenomenally great assist, a flash of everything that Rooney ever was. Raw, relentless, uncompromising, with outstanding quality. And finally, Derby County. As a player manager, and finally manager, the Warrior had become a gaffer. Over the years, he had supplied Ronaldo, fueled Robin van Persie. He shouldn't really have a debated legacy, but he does. But why is that? Maybe because Rooney wasn't graceful, wasn't polished, wasn't made for talking to the media. Maybe he was just too common and too real. Perhaps football wasn't ready for somebody like Wayne Rooney. But the facts don't lie, and his records stand. And if you make a sober assessment of him, you can't really name another English talent that was definitely better than him. So now, I ask you, after all the goals, all the sacrifice, all the brilliance, was Wayne Mark Rooney England's GOAT? Was he the country's greatest ever talent? And have we ever truly given him the love and respect he's owed? Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments. Wazza, we salute you.